every single person has their own unique form of power. So even if you say you can make the time to talk to yourself, right? It's like we have the time if we make the time, and it's valuing yourself enough to say yes. If you're the kind of person at the end of the day, you're tired, you had a full day, you find yourself surfing YouTube or Netflix, or you're going through your phone, there's a word for it.
Nationally award-winning author and life expert Alice Inoue is the founder and chief happiness officer of Happiness U, an educational establishment located in Honolulu, Hawaii. Over the past 2 decades, her work has helped both individuals and organizations find clarity, with her most notable achievement being the creation of an innovative personality assessment featured in her award-winning book, Master Your Superpowers. Alice, so great to see you. Welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Brad.
For those who haven't encountered your work, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. It's really always interesting for me to answer this question because I do so many things. But I think the most relevant is I've been working with individuals for the past 25 years. 10 years ago, I opened a business called Happiness U, and it can stand for U as in university or you as in you. And the whole thing was really that when we grow up, we're really trained to achieve, to get good grades in school. We never really learn how to deal with failure or emotional things or jealousy. And so it's kind of like I started it with that intention of everything you didn't learn in school about life. So I wanted to call it the School of Life, but people said School of Life, that sounds hard. So I changed it to Happiness U. So what we now do is just help individuals, mostly organizations, with positive mindset and helping people just thrive at work and just feel happier, get along better. Nobody wakes up and wants to have a bad day. So how do we have better days?
Amazing. And beyond that, your background has been working with people for many, many years.
Yes. And it really, interestingly, I feel like I've had many incarnations in my life. And prior to this last 25 years, I was in media. So I did a lot of television shows for Japan, for Hawaii, just really, just a whole different life. And then one day I found myself on unemployment because they had sold the television station that I was working at. And I found a new path in something completely crazy and opposite, which was astrology. And that's how it started. I got into astrology, learning about people. And that really just led me to understanding people, their life cycles, who they are, what their purpose is, where they're headed. And that led to, from there to Feng Shui, then into life coaching, and then on and on until now. I pretty much do it all, but I do it mostly in organizations now.
Amazing. So what do you think are some of the factors or obstacles to happiness? Because we hear a lot about people experiencing an epidemic of anxiety, an epidemic of loneliness. Why? Any ideas?
Yeah, I really think that the hardest thing to do is to stay present.
This episode is brought to you by Start With Values. If you'd like to reduce stress and increase fulfillment in your work and life, then check out startwithvalues.com. There, you'll be able to download the Values app, which helps you to discover your core values and bring them to life through micro habits. There is a values course so that you can learn about the science and practice of core values, and you'll be able to pre-register for my forthcoming book called Start With Values. I hope that these tools will enable you to achieve more fulfillment and make more meaningful decisions on your journey of life. Now back to the episode.
We're so creative as individuals that when we are feeling a little bit anxious or feeling a little bit worried, we tend to extrapolate that and sort of magnify it into the future. And then we look to the past where we've had challenges. And then we're really, what I call it, like not living in the present. So the key is really to recognize, like, even though right now you and I are talking, you could have some serious issues going on. I could have some serious things going on. But when we're present in the moment, engaging in this conversation, we're actually fine. So more moments of presence. I think that's a simple way to place it. With all that's going on in the world, with the advent of all the, the digital technology and everything that takes us away from the present moment, we've forgotten how to just be human. I think that's kind of where it comes down to for me.
So much of our suffering is just because of future or past based thinking. So by bringing yourself to the present, you actually relieve yourself from that suffering. That's a really interesting idea.
It is. Like, if right now, let's say you have $10,000 in whatever denomination in the bank. If I keep looking at my bank account and I'm looking at go up and down, my emotions are going to go up and down. But right now, there could be like thousands deducted and I wouldn't even know it, right? But I'm staying here present with you. Do you see? So it's like we stay focused on what feels good, and it becomes a practice and it becomes a habit, and then we can start to grow that. Otherwise, we're not. Think about this. Everything we think today seeds the next moment and the next moment. So if we're constantly worried about the future, we're just creating more worry as we move into the future. And the future is not created yet. We create it by what we think and what we seed in the present. So being present is so powerful. That's why when you meet someone and they're there with you and they're listening to you, you feel heard, you feel power. We all know, like when you talk to somebody who's on their phone and looking around, they're not present, you can't have that connection. So the connection with yourself is in the present moment. So that's really, if you're going to say like, how does it happen? It just happens by just being present for just a moment. That's why we breathe and we get present. We can't be scattered in life because we create scattered energy.
Any tips for people who want to cultivate presence? Is meditation the only way?
Oh, yeah, what's interesting is when I first started, I thought meditation was the way. I thought it had to be meditation. I actually explored, and I'm not exaggerating, something like 23 different forms of meditation, from Rosicrucian to transcendental, anybody that was teaching meditation. And I ended up personally just coming to meditation doesn't have to be a sitting and doing it in any certain way. It's just really, I'll use the word, spending time with yourself and checking in with yourself. Like, for example, Brad, like you become my friend. And so then every month or so, I want to check in. How are you doing? We check in with other people that we care about, but we rarely get that opportunity to check in with ourselves. So how do you do it? It's literally, spending time with yourself. And it could be going for a walk. It doesn't mean like watching television. It just means asking yourself some questions like, what do you need? What is it you need? I would do that for you. If you're going through something, you're not happy. What do you need? How can I help? We rarely turn that question onto ourselves. So that's self-awareness to me is sort of the key.
And for that, you need to allocate time and space. Don't just think it'll happen when it happens. I know personally when I go running and I go up to the summit of the little mountain down the road, that is me creating space for that to occur. But it is structured because I know that when I get to the top, I will have those few moments of reflection. You kind of, I guess, for someone who really wants to commence the journey, they need to prioritize it. Prioritize that little bit of time with yourself, whether it's walking in nature or potentially journaling or something like that.
All of those. And there's so many ways we can do it. I think the first step is saying I'm important enough to spend some time on myself. If you are a mother or a father or a business owner, we know, or you work in your community, are the demands on our time. If you don't put yourself on the plate of your life, if you don't make yourself a client of yourself, at the end of the day, there's just no time. You'll never get it done. You will never get it all done. There's always something to do. So, just like how you and I chose to put this hour aside to spend time together, it's that important to choose to put time aside for ourselves. We do it for everyone else. It's so important to have those self boundaries. I think that's the start. It doesn't have to be something formal, right, of meditation. It could just be, I am going to do this, and there's like no restrictions, right? It's not to get, if I enjoy running, I'll run, but it's not so that I can get healthy. It's so that I can just just have some space to myself. I think that that's necessary, actually.
Without a phone, because I'm
Yeah.
100% sure that if I booked half an hour with myself and the phone was there, somehow it makes it into my hand. I don't know about you,
No,
but it's got a way of doing that.
So I have this rule in my life. Every
Yeah.
4 months, I take 4 days off. Every 4 months, I take 4 days. And I schedule these 4 days, and I actually I go to this place. I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii, which is a city. I go to this place called the Volcano. So it's where the big volcano is. But I've been doing this for 17 years. They've never had internet. And that's why I went. I would get away from everything. Well, guess what? Last year, they thought they were smart and they got high-speed internet. So I said, well, I don't care. I don't use it anyway. But I'll tell you, I got there. It took me 24 hours before I had to finally turn the phone off and throw it in the closet. I was like, man, I am so addicted. As conscious as I am, we are just so addicted to distractions. And that's where we sort of lose our power. We lose our energy. Yeah.
How can people cultivate more power? Any thoughts?
Yeah. I think it's just the first thought is to say that, and it's so hard for sometimes people think that we need to go outside for guidance or we need to go outside for people who know more than us. But I think it's just to even like, I don't know if you're into like affirmations, but even just the words I am, like I am, like it's true. Every single person has their own unique form of power. So even if you say I am powerful and you say it with conviction, you'll start to feel it and you'll start to see where that power is. I think we give away our power a lot, or we're compare and contrast. I'm not good as that person because I'm not here, I'm not there. I think it's just such a great self-awareness that you're not ready until you're ready. And I'll just say that. It's like when you know you need it, you know you need it. And that's when you have to create time for it.
Makes so much sense. And what you said is those affirmations are now being supported by research. So in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he says, start with identity. I am a fit person. And then you put in place micro habits, tiny habits that will gradually shift you towards being a fit person. So you don't have to be that person right now, but just telling yourself, creating an identity, that's a powerful first step, as long as you take action.
It is. And it's funny because we forget that we create our own reality by how we think. We actually, the more I think this way, the more that becomes the lens through which I see life and myself. And then I'm living through that reality. It's very real. And you're going to say, no, you're powerful, but I've been looking through this other lens, so I don't see it. So everything starts with you. And we say that you are the one that you get up with in the morning. You're the one that puts yourself to bed. You're the only one you're going to be with for your whole life. So it's just that awareness that, man, whatever you have in your life that you like, you created that. But we tend to discount what we've created and look for where we're lacking, focus on what we're lacking, and then feel like we haven't accomplished anything. So more than anything, I would say to look at what you have created in your life. Anything good in your life, you manifested that. But we tend to discount that.
Self-criticism is a real risk to resilience. And in my other work at the Resilience Institute, we found that people who scored lowest in overall resilience and well-being scored highest in self-criticism, which is fascinating. So that inner voice that tells us, oh, you're not good enough, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. I suppose by scheduling that little bit of time with yourself and focusing on the good things, you can start to quiet that other voice that's not constructive.
Yes, because you're giving value to yourself. You're saying, oh, Alice or Brad, you're valuable enough to spend time with me. I see it all the time. I work with, oh gosh, in 1 month, I will talk to 100 different people. That's just sort of my schedule. Like I'll talk to 100 different people and I talk to them every month. And that's really the thing. I don't have time. I wish I had time. But hey, you made the time to talk to me. You can make the time to talk to yourself, right? It's like we have the time if we make the time, and it's valuing yourself enough to say, yes, I'm worth it. But the excuses come, but you don't understand my commitments, my family. And I do, I get it, but we all have 24 hours. And so it's just what's important, right? If your friend says, let's go have dinner together, you make time for her. Why would you make time for yourself? So
Yeah,
that's probably my biggest thing,
I
not being
agree.
present with yourself enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can make time for scrolling or watching Netflix, then you
Yeah.
certainly do have that time available. I think that's a really powerful message. And not everyone's ready. So if the thought of sitting and scheduling some time for yourself sounds painful, maybe tune out. This might not be the podcast for you at the moment because we're going to go
Exactly.
deeper.
Yep. And this is just a reminder. Like, it's just a reminder. And did you know that if you are the kind of person at the end of the day, you're tired, you had a full day, and you find yourself surfing YouTube or Netflix, or you're going through your phone, there's a word for it. You might have heard of it. It's called revenge bedtime procrastination. It's
Ah,
because you are procrastinating against bedtime because you're revenging against the fact that you didn't get enough self time. We all need self time. During the day, we're giving out everything to everyone else. When we finally have a moment of peace, most people call it, I have to decompress. I'm just have to decompress. What it is you are craving self time. That's really what it is. So it's called the less time you have for yourself in the day, the more you're going to have that revenge bedtime procrastination. So when you are well, you give yourself the time that you need, then you won't need to like tune out through that kind of stuff as much.
RBP, revenge bedtime
Yeah, bedtime
procrastination. I'm going to remember
procrastination.
that for my workshops. That's great. And it's
Revenge
also,
bedtime.
I notice that if I jump into bed and immediately start thinking about all of the issues, the problems of the world, lots of them beyond my circle of control, it's often because I didn't create enough space to resolve those earlier on in the day. So the moment you start to shut down, your mind tries to, it's a problem solving machine in some ways. Or if you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're really under pressure, your mind will start spinning, trying to resolve things, exploring all of this danger that may or may not happen in the future. So you're exactly right. The answer is creating some space, not just once a week, but potentially every day, just to tune into how you're doing.
I want you to think about, if you look at a magazine back in the days when we had magazines,
Yeah.
if you're looking at a page that have ads on it, if it's a page that has photos and text and so much, you can't take it in. You can't even absorb it. But if you have the right amount of white space, the right amount of pictures, some text, it's inviting us in. So our life needs white space. We can't just all be pictures and text all the time. So I always think about that. Like, we need white space in our life, and that white space is so we can inhale and exhale, not just exhale. We need that balance. And it's different for everyone, but everyone knows if they're not getting what they need. We all know it. The hardest thing is to make it happen, but it just starts with some time, like scheduling time for yourself. That it doesn't have to be long either. It's just giving yourself some value. I think that's really where it starts for me.
White space in your life. I love that concept. I learn a lot
White
with you, Alice.
space.
It's so
Oh, I
good.
learned
It's
from you
so good.
too. White space.
So beyond finding your power, we all have what you call superpowers. Tell us a little bit about your book, Master Your Superpowers. The link will be in the show
Oh,
notes, but I'm so fascinated to hear more and how the concept came about.
so interesting. You and I were talking before we started recording that we both like to write books, and I
Yeah.
do too. And people tend to see me as someone who's positive. So they said, you should write a book on the power of positivity. So I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can do that. So it's a superpower. Okay, great. So I invited an artist to help me decide, do I put a boy or girl superhero on the cover? And he says, well, aren't there more than one superpower? Isn't there more than just positivity? And that triggered me into remembering in Eastern and holistic, if you think of Eastern philosophy, they have the philosophy of the 5 elements. And these 5 elements work together in a perfect, almost like a perfect, what do you want to call it? Perfect. They work together perfectly. So in other words, let me just describe them. So there's water, and it feeds wood. Think of how water fuels plants. Wood will fuel fire. Fire burns out and becomes earth. And then from the earth, it contracts, the minerals contract to get metal. And metal, if heated enough, it will liquefy to water. So we have this perfect way of what we call a creative cycle. But you can't just inhale without exhaling. There's no day without night, up without down, left without right. So in a perfect manner, these 5 elements also control each other. Water will put out fire. Fire will melt metal. Metal will chop wood. Wood will break up and take nutrients from the earth. And then earth will stop the flow of water. So we have this perfect system. And I recognize that each of these elements also pertain to personalities. And so what I did was I took these elements, I personified them, and I elevated them into superhero status with superpowers and weaknesses, just like any human being, like how Superman has kryptonite as his weakness, and created a personality assessment around it just for fun. Really just did it for fun. And we found it to be so incredibly accurate that it just became a thing that I started using in training with companies and organizations. So when you take the assessment, you become one of 20 superhero archetypes. So you can be anything from the efficient producer to the spontaneous initiator to the calm connector. And something about superheroes just lights our spirit up, and we all want to know where we're powerful. So bottom line, the assessment shows where your power lies. Instead of saying, oh, you're aggressive, I'm passive, I'm organized, you're disorganized. So it's not a bipolar left and right thing. It really just is. Everyone has their own power that they bring to the table of life.
So fascinating. And how have people responded to this assessment and framework?
Well, what's interesting is I'm learning a lot from you about psychometrically testing things. And so we're in process of getting it psychometrically tested. But prior to that, I'll just say 99% of the people just say, oh my God, that just sounds so much like me and why it's good. Nobody wants to hear about where they're not good. They want to hear about where they're good. And this really just shows where your power lies. So for example, wood, if you test strong in wood, wood is very resilient, as we know, but wood is also very creative. Think of a tree. If a building is built next to the tree, it just creatively moves its branches to reach the sun. Trees have a goal. They want to reach the sun. They know that they need nutrients. They dig into the earth. So wood people, they have goals. They're creative in the way they go, and they're not afraid to ask people for help. And that's very different than another element. So I found it to be really great feedback from people. We've had over 10,000 people take the assessment, and it's been really surprising that that people have related. Yes.
And in the workplace, I imagine this has many benefits in terms of helping teams build cohesion so that they understand you're more wood, I'm more fire, that person's more metal. And that's potentially why we don't all see eye to eye. But once we know it, we have the tools and skills to work together rather than against each other.
Yeah, there's a language. So think about a team and think about a leader who might be a strong metal. And so think about metal. Think of an axe. It chops wood. And metal likes precision. They're very careful. They're very structured. They're not going to move faster than they're ready because metal, think how long it takes to bend metal. Metal wants to just make sure their superpower is focus. Their virtue is commitment. Like when they say yes, it's a yes. Think of a wood person that works underneath the metal boss. And the wood person is creative and has all these ideas and wants to go fast. It says, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. And then the boss is like, no. So then there's this frustration. But if you understand that the metal people, they need certainty, they need to know how it's valued. Like if you approach them in a metal way, they'll soften up and allow you to be creative. So it's understanding the dynamic in a team. Otherwise, the water's putting out the fire and the fire is melting the metal and the metal's chopping the wood. And then you get nowhere. You're just arguing. So to me, it offers just a way to see the individuals not as good or bad, but simply a part of the whole.
Yeah. And it's a very wholesome model using these elements that people have identified and talked about for a very, very long time, thousands of years.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know some tips from Feng Shui for building a better environment.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. Thank you for asking. It's we don't think about positioning very much unless you're into Feng Shui. So when I talk about positioning, I want you to think about an executive who sits in an office. Okay, so imagine you walk into this executive's office and there's a beautiful view because it's the corner office. He is not sitting facing the view. He's sitting facing the door. Think about it, right? He's sitting facing the door. When you walk into an office, you don't walk in and see the back of a leader. He's facing you. That is called the power position. Think about mafia or Italian gangster, Chinese gangster. The gangster sits way in the back in the corner. He doesn't sit close to the door. He sits way in the back in the corner because it takes longer for the enemy to reach him and everybody can fight. So what we want to do is position ourselves well. So right now, I'm sitting at a desk. I can see the door. So in business, you want to position your desk, not with your back to the door, because the back is where people can come in and it's uncomfortable. Like, I don't know if you've had that, Brad, where when you're at a restaurant, you don't want your back to the door. You want to sit in a place where you can see the environment. That's the power position. So in Feng Shui for business, you want to set yourself up so that you can see the door. Cubicles, like let's say you work in a cubicle, then you put one of those little mirrors so you can see behind you. Because the theory is, if I don't feel comfortable, I don't know who's looking at my computer screen, I'm going to not be able to be in my power. But if I can just lift my eye and see who's coming in, I'm in power. Same with your bed. Like, you want to sleep, not with the door behind you because it's considered psychologically almost unsafe. You want to sit where you open your eyes, you can see the door. So those are things that we talk about in Feng Shui, is positioning. We think about things like the entryway. So the entryway to your home, the entryway to your office. When you enter, the entryway is where all energy comes in. So this is where the people come in. This is where your good fortune comes in. Like all the flow has to come in the door. So if your door is squeaking, if there's a bunch of stuff behind your door, you can't open your door, then that is energetically or metaphorically like blocking energy. So you want your door to open effortlessly. You want to walk in and sit in a place where you can see everything that's coming in. That's kind of the basis of it. Like Feng Shui is basically managing your environment so that you are at an advantage energetically in every way.
And it makes so much sense, because if you are constantly walking past a messy environment, I mean, it really does have a certain weight, because suddenly you look at it and go, that's stressful, I need to tidy that up. Or it's just even the access is not easy. So it's all about is minimalism an important ingredient, or you can have a busy environment?
Busy environment, it's just every item it has to support you. So think about this. You watch television and we have these things called remote controls. I push the button, you can't see the energy, but the screen changes, right? So there's obviously unseen things that make a difference. When you are in your home, everything in your home is beaming energy to you. So the picture on the wall of, which I've seen a lot, the picture on the wall of a bunch of sand traps on a golf course that represents obstacles. You think it's funny, but you have obstacles as energy in your office. So what you have around you has to support you. It can't be from 20 years ago or somebody else's old picture. Everything has to have a meaning. So first, when I was doing this actively, my first rule is to minimize clutter, because we are attached to everything in our environment, seen or unseen, almost like invisible strands attached to everything. If you like it, it's supporting you. If it's dead energy or clutter, it's draining you. You want your environment to support you, not drain you. That's why we want to minimize clutter. Second is really just look around your office and see what doesn't match who you are today. You remember how we were talking earlier about presence? If you have a bunch of stuff from 25, 30 years ago that represents the old you, that's the past holding you back from present. So get present with your environment. What are things around you that support you and show who you are today, or give you good energy? Like, I'm looking at something on my desk that I remember the person that gave it to me. I love the symbolism. It feeds me energy. This other cup, perhaps it's here, that's that has a crack in it because I had an argument with somebody and I cracked it, that is giving me argument energy. So the idea here is have things around you that support you. And the third is always pay attention to the pictures on your wall, because your walls tell a story, and you can use your walls to influence your how you feel psychologically. Those are the three main things that I talk about.
Interesting. So if someone decides it's time for change, I'm a fit person going forward, a really good place to start is by changing your environment. Get rid of the reminders that remind you that you're not a fit person or of who you were, and let your environment support that transformation.
Yeah. And that's the first place. If you don't know where to start, we're talking about how do you get present? How do you find happiness? How it's so elusive, right? Okay, spend time with myself. What do I do with myself? We'll start with your physical environment. As physical human beings, we respond to the physical. All you need to do, you don't have to set a goal to clear clutter from your whole house. Start with your drawer in your desk, just your drawer. Get rid of the pens that don't work, just your drawer. Maybe next time, do like where you sleep, that side desk, dust it off, get the books that are just sitting there, old magazines, get those off. Just do little bits. That's how you can start to clear out some of your energy. And then the rest of it comes natural, but it's really great to if you're going to set aside time, just clean one desk, one bookshelf, just see how that feels. Because when you get the outside aligned, your inside starts to resonate and up level with that.
Tell me about astrology. Some people say this is one of the most important areas of their life, and some people are skeptical, and I'm sure you've experienced the whole spectrum with some incredible results. Perhaps you could tell us what is it and how does it work, and what are some of the potential benefits for those who are curious?
I would love to. So I will say I started out, astrology found me. I never said I'd like to grow up and be an astrologer. In fact, I was neither a skeptic nor was I a believer. It just wasn't a part of my life until I found that an astrologer had told me a day 3 years in the future where my career would change. And it actually happened on that day. I was fired. And so that woke me up. I wanted to learn about this incredible solar system that we live in and how it impacts the humans. So I want you to think about how when you wake up in the morning, we look for the sun. At night, we look for the moon. It's never been different for human beings on Earth. So the ancients found that there's a pattern, like when certain planets were in the sky, they noticed certain events. So it kind of started from that. But basically, at the time of your birth, the longitude and latitude of your birth, at the time of your birth, if we were to take a picture of the sky, we would get a little map. Every single human being on this planet has a map that can be shown of their birth time. And from this planetary map, we can understand personality, tendencies, the things that you might have heard about in the magazines. These are all very general. What we're looking at is something extremely individual. And as life cycles go, you move through life after you're born. There's times of change. You've moved, you graduate, you get married, get divorced, buy a house, have children, have challenges. All of this, interestingly, shows up as a pattern. And I can track this pattern. And I'll just tell you, after doing, well over, I always say 10,000, but I've been saying that for years. So thousands and thousands and thousands of people, I have not once, this is the most crazy thing, not once found it to not align with the individual's character and their life timing of events. So I'm not even going to say I'm a believer. I have seen so much evidence that our lives follow a certain synchronistic pattern that I can't deny it. But also, it doesn't tell your future. Like, I'm not able to say, oh, Brad, you're going to meet a girl, and she's going to take you to this amazing place. I wouldn't know that. I just know that there would be an opportunity at this month. It could be a female, and your life will play out the details. So I love astrology because it gives you a guide. It doesn't tell you the answers.
And in your experience, a lot of these hints you get about the future, they have a tendency to manifest.
Yeah, they do, in ways you wouldn't expect. So even for me, I mean, obviously, I will look at my life cycles every year and sort of see what's up. And I saw, for example, last year that there was sort of in a chart, every area represents a part of life. And in the area of, of breaking free from or creativity and networks of groups of people, there's a huge expansion in business there. So I thought, oh, great, my business will reach more people perhaps, or I'll do bigger companies. Never would I imagine that I would be doing work on the mainland in Chicago and big cities like that. So I wouldn't have known how it manifested. I just know that there's something big. So I got ready. I got my ducks in order in case there's something big happen and something dropped out of the sky, literally, and it fulfilled it, but I could not have imagined it.
And for those listening, I was neither skeptic nor believer. I'm very open to pretty much everything. For those who follow the podcast, they'll know that. But we actually spent some time, you kindly spent some time looking at my time and place and date of birth. And it was surprisingly, in fact, incredibly accurate, especially in terms of mapping out some of those events over the course of my life. How do you suggest people find their own? How do people go about getting a reading?
One of the easiest things to do now is just to go online and if you have, and the most important thing is your birth time, because your birth time is so important, because that's the moment you took your first breath. And that's the idea is that at that moment you imbued all of the energies of that moment, and that's what you take going forward. So having your birth time is most important. And then there's a lot of what you would call like online free chart generators. But I will share this, and I might have shared this with you before, but I'm coming out within a couple of months. We'll have a television show out. We're going to run it on YouTube first. And it's called, and this is where you could go, and it's called Following Journeys. And we have a website, followingjourneys.com. And we've already have 8 shows filmed. So what it is we have a person that's never had a reading before. And I give them a reading. I give them some sort of life cycle timing of the future. And then we go back and follow up on their journey to see if what I said happened. So since I last talked to you, Brad, we went and followed up on all these people from the first filming, and every single person hit right at the mark. When I say that there's business instability, the guy is like, oh my God, yes. After 20 years, my landlord is going to sell my building. And so now I have to find a new place. And other people that it's just crazy. So anyway, this show will follow the journeys of business leaders using their astrological charts. And so that's kind of, and then on that site, we'll have all this information about how to get your chart done and how to kind of further your knowledge of understanding yourself.
It sounds excellent. I can't wait to hear this. Well, watch it, see what happens. What keeps you motivated? I mean, you've got Happiness You, Master Your Superpowers as a program and an assessment. What really keeps you motivated?
I think it's the idea that that I feel like I have. I think we all have overcome our own demons. I feel like I have overcome so much, and I didn't have a lot of support in that. It was just sheer survival, like needing to move out of whether it's abusive situations and, what would you call it? Like that kind of eating disorders, all of that stuff. And I really realized it was because I didn't know who I was and I didn't trust myself. But beyond that, what keeps me going is the fact that I think it's so simple to have a better life, but nobody really realizes how you can create a better life simply by thinking different thoughts. And just like that book you mentioned earlier, what did you mention? The atomic habits. You just need a little bit. You just need to value yourself. Like there's little steps, and that's what keeps me going, to see that I can just offer like one small piece of advice and someone takes it and uses it and says, oh my God, I feel so much better. That is what keeps me going. It feels so fulfilling, yes, to be able to share something and someone consumes it and then they say, oh my gosh, that was helpful. So that's what keeps me going. Yeah.
So interesting. And your career in television, do you miss that kind of fast paced? I can't imagine it. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more. What was that like?
Oh, it was a lot. I was I was sponsored by these big companies like Polo and Polo LaFerrin and Nike, and I got so much money and clothes, and Sephora gave me makeup, and I swear it was like everything I wore was sponsored. I could go anywhere to eat. People would pay for my dinner so I could give them a plug because, so it was like, it was wonderful. But I'll tell you, I didn't feel fulfilled by it. I learned how to speak in front of the camera. I learned how to introduce things and do all the hosting things, but I didn't find it to be fulfilling, which is crazy because you would think with popularity and all this money and sponsors. So I do not miss it at all. I thought it was completely done until this person that's investing in the television show came. And I was like, I'm so done with television. Why would I want to go on TV? And when she said, I want you to do astrology and show people that the proof that it works, then I was all in. So for me, now I get the best of both worlds. I get to use the skills I learned so long ago to interview these people and give a reading. And now we're going to get to see real life, how astrology actually plays out in people's lives. So I don't miss it, but I'm glad I'm doing it again.
It's so great that you're doing it again. I can't wait to see the shows as soon as they're released. So we'll link to followingjourneys.com.
We're trying to get non-believers. I want people to be like, I don't think astrology, I don't mind curmudgeons. I don't mind people that are not open to it. So we actually got this financial analyst on, and he's so left-brained, and he had no water in his chart, which no sensitivity or emotions. So the whole time his face was just contorted. It was so painful to him to try to understand how I can talk about, because what I do is I go back, I say 1993, what happened? 2004, something business, did you move? And it was like, oh, I opened my business, or I got a financial partner. And anyway, he was so confused by the end of it. And I love that, because when we follow up with him in 6 to 8 months, and whatever I said is going to happen, he'll just be even more blown away. So I love it when people aren't into it, because then we can actually show something valuable.
I've met many people like that over the years in workshops, whether it's about resilience or something else. And, the logical, analytical types, and you can see this pain, this tension, and they're like, oh, I've got a view of the world and I do not want to change it. And then they do. And they come back and go, wow, and they're a different person. They've managed to just break down some of the barriers.
Yes. And I think the paradigm shift is what really excites me, when I can see someone have a paradigm shift about life. That's just so exciting, because we look for what's not good so much. And the moment we look for what's good and we see that we have that power to bring in more good, and then you live in that new reality, not discounting the fact that you will have challenges and life is still going to happen, but that you're more of a creator of your reality. It's so inspiring to see that paradigm shift. But it doesn't happen overnight. You just never know when somebody's going to wake up and shift. We're just one piece in somebody's life until they have enough pieces where they're ready to see something new.
That's when the magic happens. You mentioned fulfillment. What are your thoughts on finding fulfillment? And this is close to my heart. I've been doing a lot of work in values.
Yes.
What are some of the ingredients to experiencing more fulfillment?
I think it's authenticity. I think what you and I were talking about, when we talk about values, most people say, oh, it's on my website, but nobody lives by it. It's like the idea that what you truly value, and you know this better than I do, every single person has their own hierarchy of values, neither right nor wrong. But I think we oftentimes try to live by other people's values, and we feel unfulfilled because we're subordinating to what you think is important, or I've given you the power to kind of impose on me your values. And so I'm living by your values, but I'm not happy. So to me, it's getting clear on your values is a huge thing. That's the only thing that you can fulfill yourself with, which is what you truly value, not what your culture says you should value, your parents say you should value. It's what you really value. And I think that to me is fulfillment. When you're living your life, that's fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I couldn't have said it better myself. My book is called Start with Values, so I'm completely aligned with that. Yeah,
Oh,
I do.
100%.
I agree. I just know even one of the things that I've mentioned in the book is micro fulfillment. So tiny moments of fulfillment based on acting in alignment with my values. So if I know that I value creativity, just making sure that for a few minutes today, I will be a creative person. That's the identity by writing even just one paragraph. Suddenly you feel more aligned with who you are.
Yes, and that's so awesome because if you know that is a value and you make time for that, you start to feel fulfilled. Where I find that people are not aligned, people say, "I value money." I don't know if you hear that. I value money. I
Yeah.
value money, but I have no money. So if you really valued money, you would save your money, invest your money, learn about money, make money your friend. You wouldn't just, but you really value what money can buy. So that distinction between what you really value is nice shoes. That's why you have no money. You think you value money, but you value nice shoes. And so that's why your closet is full of shoes. So the idea is getting real with it. Doesn't mean you can't change, but it's the idea that we fool ourselves like, oh, I'm healthy. I value health. Are you doing healthy things? Like, are you eating healthy food? But no, when people value health and they're not living it, then they're living outside their values and they're not fulfilled. So get real. Like, you value eating junk food because it actually makes you feel good in the moment. That's okay. Like getting real with yourself is like the first step
Yes. Yeah.
to it. So I think a lot of us live in an illusion of who we are. We want to be this person and we're like ashamed that we're not living that. So we push these are good values, but we're not living by what we truly value. It's just, it gets mixed up. That's why
Mm,
your work is so timely because if you don't know truly what you value, how are you going to live a fulfilling life? You're living someone else's life.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it was John DeMartini who said, "Stop focusing on ideals. It's the values." You know, we might say, "I want this and I am this," and as you said, authenticity. Stop focusing on ideals and get real about your values. What really matters? Because if you live in alignment with that, well, I know in my own life, your stress reduces because you're being authentic.
Yeah, just like people say, like, oh, like I beat myself up because my house is so messy. My house is so messy. Well, if just get real, you don't value a neat house. You value something else, but you're beating yourself up for not having a clean house. My assistant, she loves having a clean house. She'll clean her house before she does work because she likes a clean house. So she truly values organization and cleanliness. Whereas, we oftentimes aren't authentic. Like if you were going to come over and I go, oh, I got to clean the house. That means I care about how I look to you. Whereas if I'm authentic, I'll be like, come on over. It's a mess. This is just me, right? So that alignment with who you are.
Oh, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. It's so funny. Little kids, my daughter's friend came over, and little kids, they just tell you everything. They've got no filters. And she says, "Oh, um, my mum just gets so stressed because whenever people come over, we have to do a big tidy up. The rest of the time, our house is just a huge mess." And I was like, I'm sure your mum's so happy that you just told us that. It's funny.
Like we have these images we need to put out that
Yeah.
I'm smart or I'm organized, when in
Yeah.
fact, just be who you are. And I think to
Yeah.
me, that's been getting real. And like, if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. It's just being who you are. And I never knew what that meant. When I was young, people would say, just be yourself, you'll be fine. But I don't know who myself is. All these adults told me what I should be. It's just taken a while to figure out who I am. And I think who you are is the key to happiness. Knowing who you are and being okay with that is the key. Knowing your values. I love that. It just ties in so well. Starting with your values is really where you start. That's
Mm,
where you start.
exactly. And then a little bit, and that works perfectly with creating a bit of space for yourself to
Yes.
introspect and discover your values, and then just dedicating that time. I love how you framed it in terms of you would prioritize other people. You would go out for dinner if someone else asks you to do it. What about doing that for yourself? That's a really nice message for people to take away.
I feel like that is your number one thing. If you value yourself and then you understand what your values are, then you do a little bit every day, like you said, micro. Try to live in those values and feel what that feels like. How how do you not want to feel good? Honestly, I don't know anyone who says, I want to feel bad. Like, we all have this desire to feel good, but we want it magically. We want it to happen. We want other people to fill in, live in alignment with who we think they should be, when in fact, it all starts with you. And that is the ultimate key. And I don't know any other way. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's so simple, but I think there's a resistance to simple sometimes.
You're exactly right. And people will sometimes say, oh, but it's fine for you, but you don't understand my life. Hey, I do admin. I do things that I hate every day. I mean, hate's a strong word. I do things that that are challenging every day. And it's just about prioritizing things around the edges a little bit more conducively to your own values and what's important to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to think of it as pain and gain. We live in this spectrum of pain and gain. So there's pain, right, in running my own business, let's say, but there's gain because I can, take off if I want to, right? So there's pain and gain. So if I now go get a 9-to-5 job, the pain is I have to show up for everyone else, but the gain is I don't want to worry about the bottom line. So pain and gain. So we're just exchanging that. And sometimes we live in the pain, and the gain, to get to the gain, it's a new form of pain. That's all I'm saying. So it takes a bit of change, right? If we're happy, great, keep going. But if you're not, where do you start? I think starting with your values is like, absolutely. Where else would you start? Because this is your life. You create your life. You can't create your life off of something that's false. So that's why being true to yourself never made sense to me until it did. That's why if anyone's listening till now, they'll probably get it. But if they're not, they tuned out long ago because it just doesn't resonate. It wouldn't have resonated with me long ago, this kind of conversation.
Yeah. Same. How can people connect with you and find out more? Where would you like them to go?
Oh, well, I just love people to come to my website. It's yourhappiness.com. That's just kind of where everything we do is there. All of our books and programs and communities, all the stuff is on there. But I would love for people to take my Master Your Superpowers assessment. That one is really fun, and you get a whole manual about who you are, what your purpose is, what your values are, and it's sort of a combination of like strength finders. It has all the things that normal personality assessments give you, but in the form of superpowers. So thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Any final thoughts for those who stuck with us this far?
Well, I would just say that if you take a deep breath and you exhale and you think about it, life feels like it can go on forever, but you really only have this one life. And you really want to ask yourself, what are you devoting yourself to in this life? Because there's always regrets, right? When someone dies or something happens to you and you're not able to do what you once did, sort of that appreciation of where you're at, just that appreciation of what you do have, looking for what is valuable in your life, just really focusing on those things, I think is really the key. Because you want to be at that place where you can say, I lived a good life and I'm ready to exit right now. So it's just like the present again, so important.
Thank you so much, Alice. You're an inspiration to me. I appreciate you so much. And thank you for investing time in this conversation. And I know we'll do it again. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad. Likewise. Thank you.
We'll see you all in the next episode. All the best for now.